Welcome back to our studio for the second part of Talking Europe. My guest today is Bernard Cazeneuve. France's European Affairs Minister is a man on a mission. He was asked by President Hollande to convince reluctant MPs to ratify the European Fiscal Compact. We'll also talk, of course, about Hollande's priorities for Europe and the place of France in the European Union. Bernard Cazeneuve, thank you for joining us on Talking Europe.
It's a pleasure.
Let's start with this French scientific study which showed that rats fed with genetically modified corn suffered tumors and organ damage. This has caused a lot of controversy across Europe. This particular type of corn is produced, of course, by US giant Monsanto, and it's sold in the European Union. Do you think the Commission should take immediate action and suspend the import of this particular type of corn?
It's a very serious problem, and you know there are a certain number of rules in Europe in order to have security concerning food and also security concerning health. So it's very important to put this problem on the table, looking at the rules in order to evaluate the efficiency of this rule. I think that during the next few weeks we shall have to speak about this question.
But if France has the feeling that there is a problem with this particular type of genetically modified corn, what guarantees do you have that its import will be suspended by the Commission?
Of course, for all the products in Europe, you have rules. And the rules are discussed between all the member states and the commissions, and of course with the Parliament. So it's very important for Europe to be the continent of food security, of the continent in which the precaution principle is always respected. So we have to go further, certainly, by studying all the conclusions of the studies together in order to take, once again, the good decision at the good moment.
Let's move to the European Fiscal Compact. As the European Affairs Minister of France, you've been asked to convince some reluctant MPs within your own party, the Socialist Party. They tell you, we don't want to ratify this treaty or this pact, as it's called, because we think it will transfer key elements of France's fiscal sovereignty to Brussels. What do you respond?
No, that's not the truth, because we were in a process, and during the campaign, President Hollande said, we don't want to have the rules, budgetary rules and budgetary discipline in the constituency. And during the last weeks, the constituency authorities in France told us that it was not necessary to...
Do you have it enshrined in the Constitution?
In the Constitution,
you will vote a law?
Yeah, because there are no problem of sovereignty in France around these budgetary discipline rules. So we are not confronted to such a problem. And there are no problems of sovereignty. Of course, it's very important in France for the Parliament to speak about this question, to vote, to be involved in the process. And we are working with the European Committee in the French Parliament in order to organize the involvement of the French MP in all the process. It's very important to organize this involvement, but there are no problems of sovereignty today.
But the critics will tell you this is austerity. They tell you this is austerity. This means that Germany has won the argument and austerity will be imposed in France for years to come.
That's not the truth. I would like to give you two answers to your questions. First of all, we are in front of the Parliament with a certain number of measures in order to decrease the level of the debts and the level of the deficits. It's very important for France to decrease quickly the level of the debts and the level of the deficit, because if we want to have growth during the next few months or the next few years, in order to have more jobs, in order to overcome the crisis, we have not to be confronted on the financial market to high spread. So it's very important to be able to finance the economy without being confronted to a high level of spread on the financial market. For that,
it's a matter of credibility.
It's a matter of credibility. It's also a question of sovereignty, because if we are unable to finance our own economy during the next few years, we shall be confronted to a tremendous problem of sovereignty.
But imagine in 2 years' time, France realizes that it needs a very ambitious stimulus package, like what Obama decided at the beginning of his term. With these rules, it won't be possible.
No, it will be possible, but we have to take a certain number of decisions in Europe. We want budgetary discipline because it's very important in order to create the conditions of growth. It's also very important for the new generation not to have to pay the debts of the past. That's the first point. But it will be impossible to decrease the level of deficits and the level of debt without a growth compact. That's why we put on the table in June a certain number of measures in order to create the conditions of growth in Europe. That is to say 120 billion in order to have new investment in Europe around green growth, new energy and so on. So that's not enough. We shall have to speak with our partners about other measures. We are speaking about the MFF today in Brussels, Monday. We shall have together to speak about the MFF. What is the MFF? It's the budget of the Commission for the period which is in front of us. We shall have to create the condition of better spending. It's 1,000 billion euros on the table for the period between 2014 and 2020. So it's very important to create the condition of the better spending in order to have good money, in order to pay the good investment for tomorrow.
Well, let's leave the fiscal compact behind and just remind our viewers that it will be submitted to Parliament at the beginning of October. Now, one of President Hollande's challenges...
Just one point. So, our policy is budgetary discipline, creating the condition of growth in Europe and in France in order to have a new deal in Europe. That's what we want to do. It's very different from the former situation with President Sarkozy.
Now, one of President Hollande's challenges will also have to reconcile the French with Europe. A poll released this week shows that 2/3 of the French would reject the Maastricht Treaty, which paved the way for the euro if they were given a second chance to vote. I'd like to hear your reaction on this, of course, but let's watch our report first.
More and more French citizens are turning their backs on the EU. 20 years after they voted for the Maastricht Treaty, 64% say they would now reject it. According to one poll, 76% of them say Europe is not helping to solve the economic crisis. This is bad news for French President François Hollande. In early October, he has to submit to Parliament a European fiscal treaty that will call for strict budget rules in the EU. Hollande is dreading the reaction of some in his Socialist Party who are known to be Euro-skeptics. At least opinion polls show the French want to keep the euro, which is not the case of the Germans. Most of them would prefer a return to the Deutschmark. German Chancellor Angela Merkel stresses that she believes in a stronger political union.
There are further steps we must take. As this crisis must be solved largely politically, we need to do what we didn't do sufficiently when the euro was introduced, namely have more coordination and more accountability.
But a deeper political union is not an easy idea to sell at a time when Euroscepticism is on the rise.
As you saw, 2/3 of the French are telling you if we knew what was going to happen, we wouldn't have adopted, or ratified, I should say, the Maastricht Treaty. Now, I'd like to ask you a very specific question on this, because Europe is at a crossroads. In its State of the Union speech, Mr. Barroso, the President of the European Commission, said that we would move to a federation of nation states. He says this is our horizon. Angela Merkel is putting pressure as well to have new treaties for a strong political union. How can you sell this idea to the Europeans? And let me ask you first, are you in favor of deeper integration?
First of all, there is an ambiguity in the position of the French people concerning Europe, because there are skepticism in front of Europe, and they want the euro to go on. So a kind of ambiguity, a kind of contradiction.
They're pragmatic,
because it's yes, because they want euro to go on, and there are skepticism in front of this situation. So we have to answer to this ambiguity. What the reasons of this ambiguity? What can we do in order to overcome this situation? First of all, it's very important for Europe to answer to the good question at the good moment. There are a certain number of emergencies. The level of spread, the increasing of unemployment in Europe, austerity in a certain number of countries. We have taken a certain number of good decisions at the end of June. We have to implement all those decisions now in order to continue overcoming the crisis we are confronted to. For example, the ECB is now able to go on the financial market in order to save euro. It's very important. The ESM, EFSF are involved in the market also in order to decrease the level of the spread. We are able now to put on the table a growth compact in front of budgetary discipline. That is to say, there is a new policy in Europe, and this new policy is going to produce a certain number of positive effects. If we want the people of Europe to be involved in a new process of integration, we have to convince all the people of Europe that what we are doing is useful in order to overcome the crisis, with concrete project, with concrete response to all the questions. That's the first point. We all know that it will be impossible in the future to go further without more solidarity. And we also know that it will be impossible for us to create the condition of new solidarity without a certain number of initiatives for political integration. So we have to have both solidarity and political integration. That's what the French President Hollande calls
specifically on Greece,
solidaire.
Because we're running out of time. Tell me on Greece, the new mantra now is don't give Greece more money, but more time. Are you ready to give Greece more time to complete its structural reforms, and do you have the guarantees that they will be done indeed?
We are in a process. The Troika is expertising the situation of Greece. We shall have in a few weeks or in a few days the conclusion of the Troika's report. We shall be able to evaluate precisely the situation in Greece. After this moment, we shall have to speak together in order to have a good idea of the situation, and also the Greek government shall tell us what he wants for his own countries. So we are in a process. We need to respect the method which is on the table in order to take once again the good decision at the good moment.
And to finish the program, this edition of Talking Europe is co-produced with the Robert Schuman Foundation, a leading think tank on European affairs. I'm glad that you like it. Now it's Director General Pascal Joannin. The question for you, let's listen to her.
Mr. Minister, following the footsteps of General de Gaulle, the President of the French Republic is in Ludwigsburg in Germany this weekend to mark the start of the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Élysée Treaty. With the Robert Schuman Declaration on May 1950, the signature of this treaty in 1963 is symbolic of a reconciliation between France and Germany and a key point of a European unification. We are now counting on new Franco-German initiative to overcome the economic and financial crisis. Could you confirm to us that the initiative is on the table? Will it be ambitious enough to recover growth and employment inside the European Union?
It's a very important question, very interesting question. It's impossible to succeed in building a new Europe without a strong link between France and Germany.
The so-called couple, the Franco-German couple.
It's very important. Of course, for us, it's very important to use this anniversary not only to remember what were the messages of the President de Gaulle and Konrad Adenauer, we have also to put on the table new initiatives for the future, for the 50 years in front of us. And these new initiatives are concerning the students, the university, the research in Europe, the industrial policy, technological transport, all those questions which are in the table of the relationship between France and Germany. And all those questions are concerning growth, the solution in order to overcome the crisis. So I am very optimistic, because when we see the decision we took during the during the last month, the last weeks, when we see all the opportunities of our cooperation with Germany, but also with all the countries of Europe, when we see how Europe today could be a solution rather than a problem, I'm sure that we shall succeed to overcome the crisis.
Very briefly, we know that human relations are very important in politics. Merkel had a very strong relation with Sarkozy. How do President Hollande and Chancellor Merkel get on?
She certainly has very strong relationships with President Sarkozy, but Mrs. Merkel has very, very, very strong relationship with the President Hollande.
Okay, well, that will be our conclusion. Bernard Cazeneuve, French European Affairs Minister, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you for watching this edition of Talking Europe. Please stay tuned on France 24 for more news. Goodbye.